Hello, and welcome to our second episode in our Insightful Leaders series, where we're looking at the themes that came out of our research paper that we launched earlier this year. Today's theme is about courageous integrity, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sue and Craig to have a conversation about what that means for them, how they've experienced it, and the attributes and skills that go with it. But before we get into the actual conversation, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself. So Sue, if I come to you first, tell us who you are and what do you do? Sue, can I just check? I can't now hear you. Craig, can you hear Sue?
I can.
Right, Sue, carry on. That's fine, as long as Craig can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me?
I can hear you now. Perfect. Thank you.
Good. So yes, Sue Beavil, my pronouns are she and her, and I have a long and varied career in professional development. Scarily, it spans 30 years. But the last 18 of those has been a very fulfilling time spent in the legal and accounting sectors. I'm currently Global Head of Learning for the professional services firm Mourant. Mourant is a law firm, a consulting firm and governance services firm with 900 people globally. And my role is to support everybody's education, training, development, career progression, whether that's initial stages of career right the way through to people considering end of career, semi-retirement stage. Qualified coach, mentor, awards judge. I love getting involved in things that support the development of people. So that's a little bit, I hope, of a flavour of my background and experience for you all.
Thank you very much, Sue, and welcome to the session.
Thank
Craig,
you.
tell us about you.
Indeed. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Joan and 1080, for asking me to come and be part of this important discussion. So I am a former Chief People and Technology Officer, where my last role was with a private aviation company called Air Partner. And I'm now an associate with 1080 as an executive coach. And I've also got my own coaching practice, which is Elevate Executive Coaching. I'm EMCC accredited, having completed my coaching qualifications earlier this year. And I'm in the process of developing my own proprietary coaching framework, which I'm looking forward to launching in October. So very busy getting on with that. But as I say, delighted to be here today.
Thank you very much, Craig. And I look forward to seeing what you produce in your framework, and I'm sure many leaders will benefit from it. So let's get into our conversation about courageous integrity. And as I say, this came through in our research paper from Human Focused and Beyond Leaders. And for me, this is such an important quality for leaders to have. And unfortunately, as I see it, I think organizational life can make it really hard for leaders to demonstrate this particular quality. So I'm always very keen to be hearing about when it is happening and how do people have the right conditions, what are the enablers that let them. So I'm really keen that we hear examples and stories from you today around when you've seen it, and we'll get into that in just a second. In our research, we found two behaviours coming through around this particular theme, and they were around about doing the right thing, even when the pressure is on, and even when it may be you're the only one who thinks that's the right thing to do, but you do know it and you believe enough in it. And that lends itself to moral courage as well. And the other one is humility. And that's about, knowing you being comfortable enough with yourself as a leader that you know you don't have to have all the answers, that you can listen to other perspectives, and that you are willing to admit mistakes and to be willing to change and act upon new ways of thinking, etc. So that very clearly came through. So as I say, we're keen to be hearing your thoughts, your views, your experiences around this. So if we start with about getting you to share maybe some ideas and examples of what you've seen. And Sue, I'll come to you first again, if that's okay, and then we'll come to Craig. But when have you seen courageous integrity in action?
I can't hear you, Sue, this time, I'm afraid.
So we seem to be yes, there's something interesting maybe about Yeah.
It's the gazillion miles away from Jersey, I guess. Sorry, everyone. There's obviously a time delay in the mic picking me up. Early stage of my career, I recall my line manager, who was the department head, receiving a call from me. I was passing on a call because the individual did not want to deal with me because I was not of the standing that was required at the particular profession, and I wasn't a chartered member of this organization. I was just an administrator in this body as far as this person was concerned. So I passed the call through to Richard and said, this is what the person is asking, but they're not allowing me to have the conversation with him. Are you happy to take it? Richard took the call and was very cross, not with me, but with the person not acknowledging. So he spoke to this individual and said, and this is where I think both the accountability and humility elements of courageous integrity and the values-driven leadership were all in evidence, because Richard just simply said to this person, the person who can help you is the person you've just been extremely rude to. I am more than happy to pass you back to Sue, but please be aware that that is absolutely the only person in my team who has got the answer that you are seeking. And for the completion of the story, the person hung up. But it was just that phenomenal support and recognition from my manager of my subject matter, my role in the department, the fact that this was somebody that he regarded their behavior as inappropriate and was calling them out on that in a very factual way. And that has always stayed with me, that he could so easily have answered the question, but he chose on that occasion, no, the person who is in the position to be able to answer that is this person. So that's an example that's many years old, and just immediately ticks all aspects, or so many aspects, of courageous integrity for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that values piece that you just mentioned, I can hear, is coming through loud and clear. It would have been easy for him to say, well, it could be a member, it could be a client, therefore I better take the conversation. Yeah. But to be willing to call it out does take that level of moral courage around it. So that's a great example. And it's great to hear. I know you said it was many years ago, but that's great to hear, because it means, this is being there are examples of it happening for a period of time now. It's not a new thing, for example. That's great.
Very true.
Okay. Craig, let's come to you and hear what you would like to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So my example, it's a connected theme actually, but a bit different. And that was around a CEO that I worked with, who we had an issue with a member of the executive team, who unfortunately had attracted a lot of allegations of bullying. And this individual was of a certain age. That doesn't excuse it, of course, but was of a certain age and way and style, leadership style, which was really quite old-fashioned. We're going back probably a few years now, but it was old-fashioned even by those standings. And I think that I was really impressed with was that this situation wasn't brushed under the carpet. This exec member was a really key member of the executive team. They had a lot of the transformation the business was looking to do was within their area, and they had a track record of delivery in this and being very innovative and creative. But my boss at the time, the CEO, had the courage and integrity to follow through and deal with that in a very humble way. It would have been very easy. There was a lot of talk and rumor around the organization. It would have been very easy for that to have got out of control. But it was dealt with very swiftly, but in a really respectful way. This was for somebody who was at the pinnacle of their career. And given their age and what had happened, it was going to be very hard to come back from. So I think the fact that it was dealt with swiftly and professionally, but also in a humble way, not excusing any of the content of why the matter had come up, but just the fact that the person had dealt with it in that way really struck me as a great example of leadership.
Yeah, and again, I'm hearing that humanity piece coming through. So, okay, this person had done something wrong, and it did need to be dealt with. And as you say, it was dealt with swiftly, which is fantastic to hear. However, there was still humanity around how to deal with it, if I'm hearing it correctly. And that's also part, I think, of that moral courage, of courageous integrity. And again, if we think about in today's environment, we're seeing so much of things being called out in a very negative way and quite extreme ways at times. Yeah, I'm hearing in there that getting a reasoned approach being used, which I think is vital.
Yeah, I think the word I would use, there was kindness around it.
Right, yes.
Not excuse. That's important, that we're not trying to excuse behaviour that's inappropriate. But there was a level of kindness and as you say, humanity around it that said, look, this isn't appropriate, but it's something. I don't think the person intended it, by the way, and that's often the case in situations where people don't intend malice, but it lands very badly, and of course, played back to them, they can see how it would affect and upset and in some ways intimidate people. But yeah, I was really impressed by the way it was dealt with, and it's something that I think I think we need to see more of. We need to see more of. This was a while ago, but I think it's very easy with a high performer who's integral to your business to excuse those behaviours. And of course, everyone else in the organisation knows it's going on, but they're fearful to say anything. And so I was really taken by the fact this was, as I say, somebody integral to the future of the business, but action was taken.
Yeah. And actually, again, you very nicely, thank you, Craig, give us a segue into something, the next thing I'm curious around, which is about the conditions or the enablers that allow the leaders to demonstrate these particular attributes and behaviors. You say, and we see it, don't we, that sometimes things are not dealt with because it's in the too difficult box, or it is a high performer and we don't want to lose the business or whatever. So I'm keen to hear again from both of you around some of those enablers or conditions that you have seen that have allowed it all to happen. Craig, let's stay with you for now, just to follow through. You may want to be staying with that example, or you may have something else, but what do you see as being the things that help make it happen?
I think having a good team around you helps. So I think in this situation, the CEO was able to lean on me and some other members of the team around dealing with this particular situation, because it was going to leave a massive void. But I think we were able to demonstrate that actually, whilst there would be a void, there was actually a lot of talent underneath that individual, some of which was actually were actually affected by the bullying and actually were being held back. So in some ways, it was about highlighting and identifying that, yes, that individual wasn't going to be there anymore, but it didn't mean there wasn't still a lot of good thinking and talent within the organization. So my job was to make sure I brought that out and magnified put the magnifying glass over the rest of the team to say, actually, there's a lot of real talent here that can continue the work that was going on, but without the bullying behavior.
Yeah. And so again, I'm hearing there, Craig, about trust in the people around you. So there's a void, but trust that can be dealt with, trust that the people will be able to all come together and work through it in whatever way. And then you were talking in that specific example about the opportunity. And Sue, I know when you and I were talking previously, I know trust was something that was very important for you in terms of how it came through. Is there anything there that you'd like to pick up on? And because we've had the issue technically, I'm just going to give you a chance to start speaking and check we can hear you. Yeah, no, keep going because I can't hear you yet. Still not coming through. Try again. It's coming, starting to come.
You've
Try
got
again.
me now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Sorry, folks. Yeah, trust. I for me is the foundation of everything, and having trust in the people around you, trust in the organisation, because I think one of the biggest enablers for courageous integrity to really be seen and observed is recognizing the different levels of interaction with courageous integrity. There's the individual's role in that, there's the team's role, but then there's the organization's role. And I think sometimes we lose sight of those slightly different but very important components. So what is the organization setting as a bar of expectation of behavior? What's the culture of the organization that will deal with a bullying scenario as you described Craig? Or as an individual, do I know and understand the expectations that people have of me in order to be able to perform and behave in the best way possible? So for me, trust is paramount. It's that foundation, but then it has a very close relationship with expectations, and then that ability at a team level to discuss and explore what's okay and what's not okay. So I'm sure many people will recognize that we're dipping into the world of psychological safety here, but that's a very real and important part of courageous integrity, I think, because you've got to make it okay for people to say, I'm not okay, or that's not okay. And then the humility and the vulnerability involved in that becomes really core. And when you're seeing a leader that says, I don't know everything, I don't have all of the answers, that becomes really empowering at a team level for everyone to be able to pitch in. And that's where the kindness element that you referred to, Craig, really begins to sing. When you see a team that is being kind to one another, still holding one another to account, but there is a vulnerability in there that can really allow people to fly, because they know what's expected and how to push on and not just accept mediocre levels of performance, because there is that trust in place. So I could talk about that forever and a day, Joan.
I was going to, if it's okay, Joan, I was just going to come over something that I think is really important, because I agree with everything Sue said. What I have seen in some situations is a little bit of game playing going on between people within teams, though, that we have all of the Chatham rules, the ground rules, the ways of working set out quite often. But what you can sometimes see is during vulnerable situations that there's an opportunity, and it's a little bit like everyone going for the weakest at that time. And it can be a bit of a sport. And I think it's not very productive because at some point you might find yourself in that spotlight where you don't want to be. So I think that kindness and that humility needs to extend also to situations where people are maybe facing a real challenge. They are maybe presenting something or standing by something that they feel alone on. And how do we react in those situations?
Yeah,
that for me is really
good
important.
point. And have you got anything that you can share around when you have seen somebody do it well, when they have dealt with it in a positive way?
Doing it well. I think that it is around calling it out, really, calling it, but you've got to be brave to do that. But I think it's calling out that behaviour. Just saying, look, it feels like we're gagging up on this individual, or, we started to get into a spiral of an unproductive nature. Let's have a bit of a timeout, or let's reset what we're actually trying to achieve. So, but it takes bravery to do that, because you're then putting when there's a bit of sport going on, inappropriate behavior, you have to put your head above the parapet. And often it falls to the HR person, which isn't right, but quite often it can be that. We're not there to be that player, really, in my view. It's not our job we're not school teachers. We do sometimes have to jump in and take that role, but it's good to see when other leaders do that as well.
Yeah. And so you're talking, but we're not yet hearing you. So I'm just acknowledging that. And I think you're coming through now. Perfect.
Yeah, I was saying I totally agree with that, Craig. And I think that's where the role of honest and purposeful feedback really comes to the fore. And sometimes, and I have this in my own experience, where I allowed my compassion for a very challenging situation for a team member to override the importance of giving a little bit harder hitting feedback. And so you ended up with a cumulative effect of an even more uncomfortable conversation as a result of my intent focus on being kind to a person in distress, rather than really thinking about practicing what I preach in the classroom scenario. So that role of feedback, I think, is quite often lost as a really core component in creating or enabling courageous integrity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm linking that with the unintended consequences was popping into my head as you were saying that, Sue. It's like you had your reasons for taking the decision you took, and yet it was not necessarily the best one in the moment. And so things can happen because there can be an impact you don't expect because of doing that. And it is that thing coming back to that courage again about being able to go, okay, this is hard, it's difficult. I might not be that comfortable with doing it. And yet it is the right thing to do because we have to get the right outcome ultimately. I think both of you have alluded to the thing about the organization and expectations, and everything you were both talking about there for me comes back to expectations and how they are set within organizations so that people do feel they can call it out, so that they do feel psychologically safe. And we've used that term organization, but of course organization is made up of people and the leaders of the organization. So I'm wondering if either you've got any examples about organizations you've been part of or worked with where you have seen the leaders do put out those expectations and live by them. Yeah, so let me put that out there. So I'm going to come to you to allow you to get your voice, your microphone to get warmed up first, and then we'll come to Craig. But start talking and I'll wave at you when I can hear you. Not yet, not yet. Keep going. Try again. It's not coming through this time. I'm going to go to Craig, and hopefully your mic will decide to behave in a second. So Craig, over to you. Oh, we just heard you there, Sue. Try again.
Oh my goodness me, the gremlins are playing a game. Loud and clear? Right. Goodness me. I've almost forgotten the question, Joan. Forgive me. It was the it was about the unintended consequences, or no, leaders about demonstrating. Yes, absolutely. I think one of the firms I worked for was involved in a sequence of acquisitions in a very short period of time, and the values of the largest acquiring firm were absolutely demonstrated, spoken about in general communications. So people would say something in a meeting, and the leaders would reflect how that demonstrated the values in action. So they were really not only demonstrating the values themselves, but they were highlighting when others were doing as well. And that just reinforced the behavior that was expected. And it was a very useful way of leading when you were bringing such diverse groups together through a series of acquisitions in a relatively short period of time. It was back to setting the expectations, I guess. That was really powerful.
Great. And I noticed again, I'm connecting with, I wonder what the impact was when that happened. How did others react? But I'm going to ask Craig to come in and maybe share how he has seen the impact and how others have reacted when that kind of thing has happened. So Craig, over to you.
I mean, I'll probably keep it more general if that's okay. I think the key thing is around honesty, because I think, when leaders are trying to convey a message, be it positive or not so positive, I think the key thing is people can see when it's not honest and not genuine. So the most important thing for me is when a leader really is a difference between, you can tell when somebody's talking from the head and heart. And for me, it's a little bit about the heart piece coming through, that somebody really believes in this. So it's really genuine. I do have a bit of an issue with sets of values and sets of statements, so mission statements and things that aren't true and aren't genuine. I think it's very easily seen through. So I would encourage anybody listening who's in a leadership position to absolutely ensure that whatever you're doing is coming from here. Can you say that? Here, as opposed to just here. Of course, it needs to be balanced by both, but I think honesty, integrity really come from integrity really comes from honesty, is what I wanted to say.
And staying with that, I can see we've got a question from Liz around how do you make it safe for others to show courageous integrity, and that piece about coming from the heart definitely plays to that. Is there anything else you would say to our audience around that? Craig, let's stay with you for a moment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's giving people the opportunity to come forward with thoughts and ideas, ask questions. Not, just allow that safe space. No questions are stupid questions. Sometimes you go on these town halls and there's a bit of ridicule to maybe somebody who's asked a question because everybody's sort of like, oh, don't you know? That's really not going to help make people feel that they themselves can be courageous in asking questions. It isn't just about leaders being courageous, because that's where you're going to hear what really people are asking and thinking about, as opposed to maybe the set questions that come in beforehand. So I think just understanding that, even for someone in an organization to ask a question, whether they're a senior person or a junior person, is quite a step. And ensuring that the environment is right for them to be able to do that. Absolutely.
And I'm connecting with what you were saying around humility there. That piece, allowing the space for the questions to be asked. As you said, no question's a stupid one. Being generous in spirit towards others. And coming again, humanity's popping into my head, recognizing that's where they're at, rather than trying to prove oneself in some way, I think. Exactly. So I think a large part there is about being humble, and your point about genuineness and authenticity is so important. I think we can often tell if somebody's not being authentically humble, can't we? Yes. And it just jars in some way, doesn't it? So it's got to come from the heart. Yep. We've just got about 4 minutes left in our time, and Sue, I'm really keen you can come in and respond and build on what you've just heard Craig saying. So start speaking, and I'll wave at you when we hear you. Still not coming, and I think you might just be coming through now. No. Maybe you can put something in a comment or chat if you want to put something in there for us, so we can pick it up for you. And I do want to just say you're demonstrating fantastic humility yourselves by working with this challenge that we've got around your microphone. I really appreciate that you're staying with. Go.
You've got me. You've got me. Good. I was just saying I'm so sorry about this. It is. I have no idea, but actually it kind of plays to what I wanted to build on what Craig was saying, and that's the role modeling. I think is so important, and role modeling accountability. And I'd actually scribbled down here saying sorry. How often do we actually hear our leaders say, "Do you know what? I got it wrong. We got it wrong, and I'm sorry." So I think the more we hear that humility in action and people acknowledging, not defending, not coming up with some sort of alternative narrative around what everybody recognized didn't really happen, but to actually say sorry, I think is a really powerful way of demonstrating courageous integrity.
I think that's such an important point. And again, I'm noticing even that idea of how it feels when somebody does genuinely say sorry to you. Actually, they don't give you a spiel. They don't give you anything to justify it. Go, yeah, sorry, I got it wrong. It's really powerful, isn't it, when that does happen? And you feel heard as a human being, as an individual, I think it's fair to say. And that goes a long way organizationally, I think. If you're somebody in an organization and your leader says that to you, you're like, okay, I'll give you the benefit here because you've done that. Yeah. We can still hear you, Sue. Is there anything else you want to say as a final thought before I lose you, and we'll hand over to Craig?
Yeah, I just want to sort of amplify, if I can, one of the skills that Craig referenced, and that's the role of listening. The proper attention to people, giving your time to people, really truly listening to what somebody has to say, I think is a really critical skill that leaders need in order to not just courageous integrity, but it plays a massive part in that. But I think just in life in general, perhaps, but listening, so important.
Yeah, and we hear the word being used a lot. We hear people talking a lot about listening. And one of my biggest wishes is that we see a lot more listening happening in our lives, in our conversations and within work. Craig, let me bring you in our last couple of minutes for you to be able to say what, either building on what Sue just said or whatever else you would like to share with our audience as some final thoughts.
Absolutely, and look, I completely agree with what Sue said, and listening, deep listening is really important, really important. What I wanted to close on was really by going back to the point about doing the right thing, and particularly when under pressure. and particularly at the moment. With the way the world is right now, with the pressure on people, the scarcity of jobs in some cases, I think it's even more important to be courageous at the moment. And we have to recognize that that courageousness that people will demonstrate has risks to it. You're putting your head above the parapet in many cases, but I think the important thing is that you're true to yourself, that you do show that humility, that your red lines, and I use that term in terms of your guiding principles, as opposed to, you could say your values, but I like to use the word guiding principles. What are the red lines you're not going to break? And I think that that's ever more challenging at the moment, where there's polarized views and there is concern about keeping your job. So from that perspective, I just encourage people to think about how they're doing it, but not back away, not allow themselves to go over those red lines.
Thank you, Craig. And I think, staying with your red line analogy, there's something there as well about your own red lines, but recognizing you may have to push your line a little because of what others' red lines are, and being respectful and cognizant of that as well. So it's not just thinking about self, but thinking about other as well, as you put your lines in place to say, okay, will this work for others as well? So a really great point to bring us to a close of this session. As always, these sessions go really quickly, and we could talk for ages, a lot longer on this subject, I think, but we will bring it to a close for now. Thank you to both of you. I said earlier about, I think you've demonstrated great humility in working with your challenges with technology today, Sue, and I really appreciate it that you've kept going. And it is a great role modeling of that. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, I say to both of you, for the insights that you've been willing to share with our audience today, because it has been really insightful to hear what you've got, and hopefully very helpful to other people. So thank you to everybody who is listening now or who will watch and listen later. We will have our next session in the near future, which is our third theme on long-term vision and strategic foresight. Look out for the details on that coming out, and we look forward to seeing you at that. But for now, thanks very much for watching and or listening, and have a good rest of your day wherever you are. Thanks and goodbye.